it must like pause or something.
All right. So good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Esther. How are you?
Good. So it's great to see you. So I understand you're going to be willing to talk with me a little bit about your experience with reading the book, Getting Unstuck.
Yes, I would love to share my experience. I've actually gone through it a couple times, so would love to share.
So let's just remind each other what this is. This is, in fact, the book.
Got it, mine.
You have one too. So I'm curious about a bunch of things. But first of all, I'd like to why did you read it? Like, what inspired you to do that funny thing? And then, like, what were you expecting? And then we'll just talk.
Let's see. Well, I having been a client of yours for many years, I have been, the recipient of many perils of your wisdom. But as you know, when you're in therapy, you probably retain 10 to 20%. At least that's how I feel when I get home. Right. I remember, these nice little segments that you say, but a good portion of it gets lost. You get the translation and the gist. So having something concrete that you had created that has your life lessons in it, the pertinent questions that you used to ask me in therapy, that was why, because it was like your teachings all in one spot. For me, the reason I believe I wanted to read the book was because I have basically devoted my life to being an assistant and helping other people. And I think Julia Cameron calls it a shadow artist, where you're always in the shadows. So while I have gained a lot of skills, while I am, successful in the areas that I've attempted, I haven't necessarily attempted in areas that were about me and my passions. It was more like helping other people. So for me, getting unstuck is making myself a priority. And that was my motivator, which is why I've probably gone through it a couple times, because I'm not done yet. So.
And it's interesting you would say that, because the reason I'm really interested in what you have to say is because I know you really well, and I know that about you. And so I always have known really the depth of your character and personality and work ethic and all of that, and creativity. And it sometimes seemed like I knew that about you better than you did. So
more often than not, honestly, but yes.
So that's kind of fun. So great. So that's fun. So what were you expecting?
Honestly, I had no idea. I was just excited to read and open the book. And I have to tell you, my first reaction to the book was I couldn't start the second chapter, because after the preface, the introduction, and the first chapter, I was so triggered, I kind of had to put it down and leave it for a bit. Because I think you were asking so many pertinent questions from jump. I was even looking at my notes, and it was like the preface, I think the first sentence in the preface is a question, and I wrote, yes. And, I was responding in the preface and was like, okay, now this is definitely resonating with me.
Good.
But the part about the child trying to cope, I think starting with people's childhood is, there's a lot of pain there. And so I was very triggered. So I definitely did have to come back to it. As far as my expectations, I kind of thought it would be, the way it is that it's, they ask you questions, you reflect. I was shocked and what's the other word I say? I was shocked and surprised at how much you had shared on your personal side, how much of your personal self that you had put into the book. And having known you for so long, I didn't know any of that. And I had just held you in this high regard as the, perfect therapist with all of the, ways to combat conflict. And, Esther probably didn't deal with this in her life. Like, she probably always had the tools. And So it was very interesting to see you on a similar journey. I'm sure you've had a lot of other readers say that it was similar, but I felt our journeys were similar. And so I really resonated with the content because kind of as the forgotten little girl trying to be perfect for everybody, um, that's the part that resonated with me. And I think that's the part that triggered me. While I wanted to dive deeper into the book to help myself, I couldn't quite yet. So that was I guess the hardest part. But even this weekend, I went back and read the book as I'm going through it again. And I think the part that triggered me the most, or that resonated with me the most, not necessarily triggered this time, was the part about self-learning.
Mm.
And that if you don't get all the things you need as a child, you look for attention from adults around you instead of turning inward and self-learning. And I think my journey on trying to find myself, I actually decided this weekend that I'm going to go back and do some self-learning because it's, I don't know much about myself. When I think like, what's my favorite movie? I don't know. What's my favorite color? It changes. Like, I don't have a lot of favorites of anything, or like I could be a reporter. I can ask you questions and ask another person questions. But as far as answering them, I do a really bad job. So I think that's my homework upcoming.
Mm-hmm. So I think I'm hearing that there was a bit of inspiration, right, to learn about yourself.
For
Like,
sure.
which
And even
was
reflecting
point
the
of the
first
book.
time I went through the book, I didn't get through the whole book because I definitely was inspired to go off and, use the lessons. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to go. I mean, I think it was the third time by the time I got actually through the entire book. Because at first I got triggered, but then I got inspired.
So I just heard something interesting, like maybe there are layers to it. So the first time or initially it's about maybe a tool or a lesson that you can use, which is how I learned about conflict. Oh, okay. Slow down. Okay, good. I can do that, right? And didn't really understand all the reasons why that was important and so forth. Um, and then you do that and try that, and you begin to discover that some of those things are relevant and work and so forth. And then you are more ready, able, willing to go deeper. So it really is levels of learning, and it's about, like you said, it's having a learning attitude instead of I just want to do stuff, but actually I want to know stuff, which of course one of the lessons in the book, there's a difference between knowing and knowing about.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing about how to use a lesson is a bit superficial because it's behavioral. And then really understanding deeply why it matters so much is a different experience.
Yes, I think the first time I read the book, when I say I was triggered, I also felt like you were speaking to me directly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good.
Even though it was your story, I
Good.
felt like you were speaking directly to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first time I read the book, it was almost like validation, like I was being heard.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if any of the lessons resonated as heavily as, like, say, the second time. I mean, this is like probably the fourth time I've gone through the book, and I somehow missed I mean, I did read the self-learning. Now that I reflect, I read the self-learning part. It just resonated with me this time because it must be something I'm supposed to work on at this point.
So it sounds like, would it be fair to say that maybe you wouldn't even have paid much attention to the lessons if you weren't engaged, if the work or the story or wasn't resonating with you? Because the whole point of the book is your story, not mine. It's the reader's story, not mine. And so that is the whole point. So I guess actually what I said before is not really accurate. Nobody's going to pay that much attention to the lessons, probably, unless there's some sort of connection or resonance or what's in it for me, a feeling of what's in it for me. Probably nobody's going to pay attention to the lessons that much.
maybe not on
Yeah,
first read.
yeah,
It's almost like you're identifying things.
yeah,
You know, you're validating those feelings. You're validating those feelings for like, say, the first chapter, the child trying to cope, um, trying to be perfect. You know, it was the first read was definitely where the validation set in, and it was like someone else had the same experience. Someone else knows how I feel. Um,
right,
but I don't think the lesson I didn't learn the lesson
right.
necessarily the first time. I don't know if that's
So
helpful or
it's
not at
kind
first.
of like, so there was a belief or an expectation that I, the writer, understood you. I could
Yes.
understand you because I'd lived it.
And you were
So that,
saying things, and in your honesty, you were saying things that I had thought but never had put on paper, or maybe put in a diary or a journal or something.
mhm,
Um, or I didn't even know necessarily, like, I opened the page, it's page 41, but it's like, do you remember hurtful things said to you when you were young? How do those comments make you feel? Um, like, other people had their parents call them strange names. I didn't know that. And then I realized, wow, I had lesbian, tomboy, spaz. Like, I had all sorts of really interesting labels that I was given. Um,
yeah.
that when I reflect on, it's like, yeah, those were my favorite.
What does that even mean? I don't think it means anything good.
No. so, so I guess upon reflection, I would tell them, somebody to read the book first. And if it resonates with you and you see your life in the book, then go back and read it a second time and actually get the lessons.
Mhm.
Because it was a very powerful to feel validated, to feel heard.
Mm.
Um, and I think I took that and toddled off with it, and then needed to go back to the book later and go, okay, wait, what were the lessons? And I think I did that the next time and learned the lesson. And now I'm going back and applying the lesson.
Well, that's what makes all the difference, right? Is
Right.
if you can't use it in your life, well, whatever.
Well, I always had the Esther wisdom in my head. Now I had it in a book, and then again, applying those two things is the chore.
So say something about the lessons. Anything in particular, or was that a good? Did it like? Did that work? Did the structure work? So it sounds like you were resonating with the reader prompts, like you were seeing yourself and connecting and being validated and all of that. So now that you're getting around to a lesson, did that process work? Having the theme as well? Were the reflection questions appropriate, helpful? What about all that?
I like the lessons. My favorite part, I think, was the couple pages at the end of each chapter
Uh-huh,
where it basically summarized what you read,
uh-huh.
because you did it in a story manner. And it's like, I think I got the lesson. And then when you go back and it's like, again, on chapter 1 about trust, there's the little paragraph,
Mm-hmm,
and it basically gives a summary of what the lesson was.
mm-hmm,
And that was helpful because it kind of validated all the stories and what was kind of, did I get what I was supposed to get?
mm-hmm.
So that I found helpful. I felt the prompts were great. Honestly, I needed way more room. I mean, I filled up the page. I got 2 different colors. I also really liked, even though I'm a checklist person, so
Yeah.
I liked when to get unstuck, I need to learn how to, and it was like a to-do list. And I didn't have to necessarily check every single one, which was empowering. But I thought that was a little to-do list that I would go back and, reflect on the pages and refer to those pages. I mean, so that was my favorite. I definitely like the lessons in the back. I also like the skills in the very back.
You did.
I did, because it gives you kind of like a tiny roadmap to where to start. Like, okay, remember this, and I can hear your voice in my head going, remember this, remember, to do this. And so it's just as there are self-help books that I've read that you sometimes you read, you put them on the shelf, you never visit. There's this, and then a couple other ones that it's a tool more than a book where I can go back to. Because, even times in my life, like a Thanksgiving with the family, there might be something in here about, resolving conflict. That's just for my family. Resolving conflict, and I might need to refer back to it and use those life lessons or use the skills that you help with in the back. So I definitely use it as a reference tool.
That's great. That makes me happy.
Yes.
Because that was the point, that this is not, we really don't have to be defined by our childhood parents, by somebody else, something or somebody else. We really can decide, and there really is a way to be your own person, be important to yourself and be your own person and create a life that matters to you, that's about you, that's meaningful and fulfilling and joyful, which is the whole point. And this idea about being defined by somebody else drives me crazy.
Yeah, somebody else or a job or what have you. So I think that's the other part of your journey that was helpful, because you've had several careers, you've had a son, you have grandchildren, life goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And careers change, jobs change, have a great relationship with your son. So it's not over. Like, you always have time to change, you always have time to improve.
Mm-hmm.
You can always have time to make yourself the priority, I hope.
It's not too late.
No. So that has been I keep getting these messages, exterior messages, tough life lessons that to remind me to make myself a priority. So even though the other day, Mike and I actually went to a sidebar, but we went to go grocery shopping. And it was like, I was washing our face masks. Now, I have sewn over 300 face masks, but we only own one each. So I'm like, maybe we should make sure that we're taken care of first, and the children, before I mail out 300 to everybody else that needs them. So it was like, okay. And then there was the screenwriting competition I wanted to take advantage of, and it expired. And what was the other thing? I'll have to think about it. But there was another thing that I missed the window, and it was like, well, if you'd made yourself a priority, this wouldn't be a problem. So it was like, okay, smack upside the head 3 times. That's usually get 3s. So there's my 3, take the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'm doing the book again. It's like, obviously I'm a little stuck. So,
well, and it's not about being, not about being selfish.
No.
Because if you're not, you or Mike or anybody else that if they're not doing their life well, then somebody else is going to fill in the blanks at some point. It's going to be somebody else's responsibility. So that's not fair. And by the way, if you defer to somebody else to do stuff for you, it's never going to be exactly what you actually really needed or wanted yourself. So it's just kind of a losing proposition. And I find that lots of people, I certainly saw it as really selfish, like to think of myself. Anyway, so it's kind of crazy.
It is. And during this time of pandemic, as a mom, I have discovered the hard way that you do need to make yourself the priority. You need to put your mask on first before your children. You need to be able to give it to yourself so you have it to give. In the beginning of the pandemic, I was making sure my children are okay, my husband was okay. I'm making face masks for everybody else, but I wasn't okay. And then, had a personal breakdown or, moment. And our life has literally been probably 90% less stressful since then, where I just dropped all that went, okay, we need to do the minimum. We need to make ourselves, make our priorities first. We also need to reduce the amount of priorities we have. Um, but as a mom, I think that's a hard job. You get very lost. It's very easy to make your kids the priority and lose yourself in the equation.
Right.
And I guess that's my biggest challenge is, putting the family first, putting the kids first, thinking I'm being altruistic and doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then that only goes for so long, and then your fuse gets shorter and shorter because you haven't put any energy into yourself. So.
Right. And less well done is almost always better.
Mm-hmm.
And
good enough is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and I've learned from other areas where perfectionism is basically you just can't let it go, and it's more of a control factor. And it's like, so I've definitely improved in those areas, but I'm definitely trying to embrace the put your mask on first so you have it to give to others.
The other thing that just occurs to me to say, which isn't, it's not part of the book, but one of the most important things that a parent can do for a child, wish I had known this, is to be your best self. Because number one, then you model what a good, healthy self looks like. You model what it's like to have self-respect for yourself and then others. And you don't have to lecture your child in order to make it really clear that you deserve respect and you expect respect, and that they can expect the same thing, and that they need to deserve and earn the same thing. So many parents make a big mistake thinking they're going to do this or that for their child or fix this or that for their child. And then, one of the lessons in the book is you have to learn your own lessons. So, you don't really realize that you're robbing your child or somebody else of the opportunity and the expectation, right, that they're capable of doing their own lesson or their own choices in their own life. So it's a big mistake. Mm-hmm. For a whole bunch of reasons, to not act in your own best interest. And there's nothing selfish about it. Now, if you're going to get puffed up and be, proud of yourself over nothing, that's a whole other story. But being self-respecting is really important.
Well, I think you said it's self-respecting is not selfish.
Right.
Everything in my upbringing told me that was being selfish.
Yeah. And it's a little like, guilt is different than regret. And selfish is different than self-respecting. And selfish is at somebody else's expense, which is not good.
Mm-hmm. So as far as getting back to the book as well, Esther, I enjoyed the workbook pages as well, because it gave me a little bit more in depth. So I probably didn't employ them till the third time I went over the book, when I was ready to really, really apply the lessons. Uh-huh. But I enjoyed the in-depth questions and just asking a little bit more.
So I guess it just depends on whether the reader is ready and willing and able to learn. Mm-hmm. If you are, there's lots of material and opportunity. And if you're not, you're not. It's fine.
Yeah, but I think it's also that if a person can get exposure to your book or know that it's out there and use it as a tool and even, read a couple chapters, mm-hmm. I think it might be one of those that for someone's library, like, there's certain ones that I keep around, like an Eckhart Tolle book or mm-hmm. What are my other ones that I have? I don't think they're down here. But there's some that I like, The Artist's Way, yeah, that kind of thing. There's some that, you always refer back to.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people will will identify with your struggle in your life. I can say, I mean, I've had my struggles, but as far as, with the physical, cleft palate you were born with, and, your parents getting divorced at such a young, like, I didn't have any of that stuff to go through. So
Mhm.
even though I saw myself in you and and struggle, I know I didn't struggle that hard.
Mhm.
So if you could do it, okay, then I should be able to do it. Um, so I think Gary Vee's the one that says, if there's anybody out there that has a similar struggle to you, then it's possible.
Mhm.
So there's a very hopeful element to your book as well.
Mhm. So is there a lesson that you would add?
A lesson. Listen to Esther. A lesson that I would add. Well, that would imply that it was incomplete. So no. Probably the one, just never stop learning,
Yeah.
never stop growing. Um, that you'll get triggered, maybe on even the same topic at different points in your life. You may need to, address that same topic at different points of your life and in a
Mhm.
different way. Um, Wounds from your childhood, heal, but sometimes again, you need to give them attention over and over and over.
Yeah.
So it's not there's no end to the process. That's what I've learned.
Yeah. This will never be done.
This will never be done. Which is a good and bad thing, because at some point you're like, okay, I'm done. I don't have any more self-help work to do, which would be nice.
I'm pretty
Um,
clear that I'll be done learning when I'm dead.
yeah. And then there'll be some sort of ethereal thing in heaven you probably have to do. So it's never over. But yes, I would say that, what to take from this book is that there's no end. You're not complete at some point.
Mhm.
It's just the never ending journey of learning about yourself and improving.
So you've made me really happy, because it sounds like your experience of the book is really everything I hope for and more. So
That's good. There's always a part of me that goes just to Esther, like, I haven't applied enough of it yet. Maybe I'm letting her down. Like, I haven't done my homework yet, but I figure if I just keep going back to it, then I'm doing okay, right?
one of the things that's been interesting to me is that these lessons, not that there may not be other essential lessons, but they are everywhere. They pop up in my life everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You start with the end in mind and learn your own lessons, and you can't change other people, and all you can do is all you can do. And, but it's really helpful. It's helpful to be able to um, count on some understanding that's bigger than a moment, right? That it's applied throughout your life in many, many, many ways. Lots of times when people come into therapy, they get terrified, and I will often say, you don't have to learn 97 things. It's
Right.
just a handful. And then they're applied 9,000 places, but it's not 97 lessons. So it seems more manageable when you understand a couple of things, when you understand the couple of things really, really well. It's not that complicated. It's not easy, but it's not complicated.
Right. Well, I think the other thing the book does for me as well, Esther, was to the lessons that you provide, like, all you can do is all you can do. I feel like I knew what you meant when you used to say that in therapy,
Mm-hmm.
but reading about the lesson in the chapter um, really explained it. I'm not sure why I didn't get it that. I mean, all you can do is all you can do. It's like, because in my brain, you can always do more. So there's not all you can do. It's not limited. So I guess that's where it was like, okay, just stop, Michelle. But when I when I read the lesson, it was like, no, all you can do is all you can do. It means, there's an element that you're powerless and you just stop at that edge. So, because my personality, I just keep pushing.
Right.
There's no edge. We keep going. So that was it there. So there were a bunch of times that there were lessons were explained better in the book. because, you know, in therapy, whether it was myself with my husband, then it's hot. And again, you're only absorbing the like 20%, like all you can do, like, okay, I'm only doing all I can do, but I didn't quite get the lesson. So a lot of the things that you had taught me, I think were, you know, compounded by reading the book. I understood more.
Well,
That was one of them I remembered.
you, I think, said it kind of at the beginning, but one of the things I know for myself in life and as a teacher, that you don't really know something until you do it, like till you apply it in your own life. And yeah, what's kind of like sales, what's in it for me? Like, well, what does this lesson have to do with me? Like, I don't know about that, right? But then sure enough, the life lessons pretty much apply to everybody's life sooner or later.
Mm-hmm.
So, but until you can make the connection, I mean, that's so important to developing wisdom. You know, that's the whole perspective thing, that you apply it here and then, oh, well, that's the same as that. Well, and that's the same as that. And then you begin to get wise, right? I mean, then things
Mm-hmm.
begin to settle down and get a little deeper, and life gets a little less terrifying when
Mm-hmm.
you can manage a handful of things instead of thinking things are overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think everybody that goes to therapy initially thinks they're broken. So how do I fix myself?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think one of the things the book does too is go, you're not broken. A lot of things happen to you, but there also may not be coming anyone to repair you. So you're going to have to do some of this work yourself.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of people want somebody else to fix them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a losing proposition.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, it's been really fun talking to you, and I love the fact that you read the book and liked the book, and so the book worked for you. That's great.
Book is still working for me. I'm still going through it. Like I said, it's a tool in my library that I will probably keep for a very long time, and that we'll have to need the referred to for a very long time. So thank you for writing it.
Well, thank you for talking to me. So have a great day, and we'll talk again, I'm sure.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, bye-bye.